It began, as these things so often do, with a whisper of opportunity and the slick promise of certainty. There were no alarm bells. Nothing about the Global Distributed Wealth Fund screamed scam at the outset. In fact, the opposite was true. It radiated professionalism, draped itself in the language of assurance, and nestled itself flawlessly into the routines of cautious, hard-working Canadians who, after lifetimes of prudence, just wanted something to believe in. The mechanics were simple. An office with a view, well, a stock photo of one, posted across their website. A trio of telephones in a rented Toronto workspace, manned by young voices trained on the finer points of empathy and patience. Brochures, weighted with heavy cardstock and embossed gold seals, made their rounds to living rooms across the country, promising, at last, a worry-free way to watch money grow. Guaranteed, they said, no risk, no sleepless nights spent watching markets nosedive or headlines blare the next economic crisis. And for thousands, this was more than enough. It was a balm, especially after years of watching their savings creep forward with glacial slowness or swing wildly at the mercy of forces none could hope to understand. The confidence game wasn't crude, it was artful. The fund wasn't just global, it was everywhere you needed it to be. Zurich, Singapore, even a polite little office in Vancouver, at least according to the letterhead. The email addresses all ended in .sg, .ch, or, at the very least, .global. If you asked for proof, you'd be told your question would be routed to compliance. Their chosen demographic was clear. Those who had already run the gauntlet of work and worry, who'd paid off mortgages, watched their children leave home, and now found themselves, for the first time in memory, with time to fill and capital to guard. They'd seen too many opportunities on the news gone sideways, and they were skeptical, just not quite skeptical enough. It didn't take much. One phone call.
Hello, Mrs. Bennett. Have you heard how the TSX tumbled last week?
The voice on the other end knew precisely how to calibrate the pitch. If you recoiled at complexity, they'd mention safe income. If you inquired about volatility, they'd throw around terms fit for the front page of an international finance journal. Algorithmic hedging, protection of principal, proprietary risk baskets. A courier would sometimes arrive, bowing slightly, presenting a navy folder lined with glossy testimonials. The names and faces were all products of stock photography, but the details were a perfect match for someone's neighbor's cousin. Trusted, affable, just like you. The checks, that's what made it seem so real. Early investors received prompt payouts, judiciously timed to coincide with rent or the purchase of new snow tires. Word traveled, neighbor to neighbor, church group to community cafe. The phone operators called it the coffee shop effect. Let the checks do the advertising for you. Soon, more joined. A former pharmacist in Saskatoon, a wheat farmer from near Regina, an accounting retiree who somewhere in Red Deer still read the Globe and Mail every morning. For each, logging onto their dashboard and seeing those steady green arrows felt like vindication. At last, someone had built a smarter, safer mousetrap.
Then came June Delacroix, Winnipeg resident, whose mailbox on a freezing Monday morning disgorged an envelope that glittered with extravagant promise.
She'd spent decades in real estate, trusted her instinct, but lately found herself sidelined, an aching knee, savings flat. Something about distributed global growth sounded like the fresh start she craved. Her phone call lasted 17 minutes. The operator charmed her, dropped references to compliance and compounding, assured her that her RRSP could be safely invested with no red tape. She wired her money. She slept easier that night, convinced she had moved her nest egg somewhere better. Within a year, there were conferences in Toronto ballrooms. A rented jazz band played while directors shook hands, offered vague answers, and clicked through PowerPoints full of rising lines, all underscored by that familiar word, guaranteed. And then, the stutter, a few missed payouts, an email, bounced. Directors suddenly traveling on urgent business, checks delayed for regulatory upgrades. Some pressed for answers, only to be met by silence. Rumors flared. A clutch of investors went to the authorities. By then, the offices were shuttered, the phones disconnected, the global aspect having become all too literal as the architects disappeared into the world, leaving nothing but meticulously empty desks and the honeyed echo of their promises. In total, over $400 million dissolved into the ether. Gone offshore, gone digital, gone for good. Most investors were left with nothing but fading statements and a lesson as old as the markets themselves. The hardest scam to resist is always the one that promises exactly what we want to hear. That's how the Global Distributed Wealth Fund made its mark, not through cunning or threat, but through the seduction of certainty. In a world of risk, all it took to swindle a nation was to whisper, in just the right tone, guaranteed.